Welcome to the Peace, Harmony, and Joy podcast. I'm Ken Brandeis, and today is a big day for me, for us. Today I'm getting to interview the person who started the Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance, who co-wrote the book, Less Stress, More Joy, the Peace, Harmony, and Joy approach. Welcome, Scott Frank.
Ken, it's a pleasure being with you here. And we've done a lot of these podcasts together as the hosts, and now you got me in the hot seat. But I'm all yours, and I'm happy to share. And I look forward to becoming more connected with our audience and helping more people.
Yeah, you're used to being on the other side of this, so you are on the hot seat today. But so before we get into Peace, Harmony, and Joy, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Look, I've known you for a long time, but there's a lot I don't know about your background. And I think probably a lot of other folks are the same way. So bring us back, give us your background and your journey to basically get us up to where you started Peace, Harmony, and Joy.
You know, here's the thing. I grew up pretty normal life, I think, like everybody else. Very supportive parents, brother and sister, lots of friends. Grew up believing that if you had an idea, if you wanted to do something, you could do it. I was a pretty good athlete, played a lot of sports. You work hard and you score touchdowns, get home runs. I mean, I just, whatever I put my mind to, I pretty much could do. In school, got good grades. I'll just say this: I got good grades without probably studying nearly as hard as I should. But everything kind of, whatever I put my mind to, I could pretty much be successful. But things I was really interested in, I could always do well at. And I think that's really one of the fundamental elements of Peace, Harmony, and Joy is finding what you're interested in. I was not particularly interested in school. I got pretty good grades, but I was particularly interested in sports. And that's where I spent a lot of my time. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I had a pretty decent high school football career, but it wasn't going to go D1 college, and that was kind of a big wake up call for me. What are you going to do with your life? And there's a couple of things that happened to me kind of early on. And I think, Ken, you can probably relate to this because I got some real important sales skills in high school. And what I did in high school was sold the newspaper for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's the local newspaper here, and I sold it door to door. You talk about hard work. You talk about working up a sweat. You talk about doors getting slammed in your face. That was about as good as training about how to understand people. And they actually had a great training program. And then they just threw you out there. They literally, you got in a van with a bunch of other teenage boys, and they literally dropped you off in a neighborhood. And this is, in today's day and age, it's, with a lot of no solicitation. I don't see a whole lot of this anymore. But back then, they just drop a bunch of teenagers off, and you go knocking on doors. But you would have to size up the person as quickly as you could. What are they interested in? If it was a woman, you look like a mother, you might talk about the coupons in the newspaper. If it was a man, you might talk about this. We got great sports articles in the newspaper. I mean, and then if they went in a different direction, cars, we got a great auto section. But you had to quickly think about what would sell them. And you're literally just, moving as quickly as you could. But people ask me why I'm good at connecting with people and why I'm even good at selling things. I really, truly believe it was something I was very interested in, and I learned it at a young age. And I encourage all of us, if you're interested in something, try to learn it as best you can, really dive into it. And the more things you can learn when you're young, especially if you've got children, let them try some things out and let them really learn. So that was a big experience. And you're a sales guy, Ken. I mean, where did you get your sales experience from?
I guess pretty similar. I guess we have pretty similar backgrounds. I grew up playing sports, and I think team sports, well, both team and individual sports, but you learn a ton from those. But to get to my sales experience and how I learned sales was pretty much like you. It wasn't working for the newspaper, but I grew up in New York where it snowed a lot in the wintertime. The way I would make money is I would go door to door with a shovel, and I would ring the doorbell and say, can I shovel your driveway for you? In the summertime, I had lawns that I mowed, and I learned how to sell, how to negotiate, how to build relationships with people, probably in a manner very similar to what you did. So yeah, but
It's
I do
interesting.
think
Yeah.
these things that you learn when you're young really help shape who we are when we're older. And I think a key thing, like you said, is encourage your children to go out and try things, let them fail, but let them learn along the way. I think is super important.
Yeah,
So
those are real wise words. It's interesting. Again, peace, harmony, joy is all about, not only finding your calm, but finding your true best self. And it's interesting. You find yourself, and then you maybe go in some different directions, but for remembering things that really you enjoyed and you're passionate about. Because I did not go into sales when I went to college, so I graduate high school, and I'm good in math. And again, I didn't work real hard in high school, but math really came easy for me. And what I was told, I had no idea where I wanted to go to college, but Georgia Tech was the big university in Atlanta, world renowned for engineering. Back then, and maybe even now, engineers get top dollar coming out of college. They don't tell you how much you're going to be making 10 years later, but if you want to go, apply your math skills and have one of the top paying jobs coming out of college, be an engineer. So, and I got to stay home. So I went to Georgia Tech. I actually lived on campus, but I was living in Atlanta, 20 minutes from home. And I'll tell you, I didn't like it.
you
But
didn't like it.
I didn't like it at all. And
Oh.
it was funny. There were so many people in my class that literally loved to take things apart, like clocks and TVs and experiment. That wasn't me. And they understood things in a way that I didn't understand. I knew how to solve equations, but I didn't like, all these wires and all this stuff. I mean, that was foreign to me. But I'm also the type of person that doesn't quit. And I knew a Georgia Tech education would be valuable. I actually did a couple of co-op jobs to actually see what it was like. I actually, a little bit liked writing some software in some of our labs and classes. So I did a software. I actually worked for AT&T as a software developer at co-op for a couple of years. Liked it in labs. It was cool to like write some code and something, kind of fun happened on the computer screen. But spending 3 months in a cube by yourself, for the most part, that was so draining to me. It was so against what I want to be hanging with people. I want to be part of a
Right.
team. So I did that for a couple of years. Again, I signed up for a co-op. I completed my deal there. I thought maybe it was not software. Maybe I want to actually do the electronics part of electrical engineering, because I was a double E at Georgia Tech. And so I get a job at a company called Nortel, and I get to actually design electrical equipment. It was actually a little bit fun in the labs, even though again I didn't thoroughly enjoy it. But I maybe I would thoroughly enjoy it as a co-op. Didn't. I mean, they again, same thing, sitting in a cube 3 months at a time, designing things, not much, real interaction with other people. And I was really concerned, right? I'm spent all this time at Georgia Tech in this engineering degree,
Right.
and I don't like it. And like, is there something wrong with me? Like, do I don't like things that pay well? Do I, how am I gonna support a family? All this type of stuff. If I'm not an engineer. So I had this thought, as I talked to people, maybe I didn't want to be an engineer, maybe I didn't want to be a software developer, but maybe I want to be a manager of them. I saw my boss; he looked like he had a cool job, and figured managers, the boss has got to make good money. So immediately when I graduated Georgia Tech, the exact same quarter after that, I mean, I didn't take any time off. I started working on my MBA. And interestingly, even though I didn't like being an engineer, and I don't even think I was that good at it, Nortel gave me a full-time job. So I worked full-time as an electrical engineer at Nortel, went to school at night, getting my MBA at Georgia State University. And the funniest thing is, when I started actually working full time at Nortel, day in, day out, and really started to see like what it was like to do that, I started thinking, I don't think I want to be my manager's job. I'm like, I don't think what he's got to hang out with all these people that, just, and he's got to get into the weeds, and he's, stuff that I just really didn't enjoy engineering, and
Right.
I don't think I was going to enjoy being a manager. You want to say something?
No, no,
Okay.
I'm actively
Okay.
listening.
Okay.
Interesting.
So all of a sudden I'm concerned. I don't know that I want to be manager of engineers. What is wrong with me? I'm about to get my MBA, and what's wrong with me? So I'm talking to more people, like, what do I do here? And somebody mentions intellectual property. They said intellectual property, especially patent attorneys, have a, there's it's they have a cool career. They get to see the future first. They get to advocate for people. And so and one of the coolest things was you can't be a patent attorney unless you have engineering or some type of technical undergraduate degree. So
Nice.
so I was positioned to do something, and I didn't know anything about that until I was working on my MBA. Um, Someone said you should talk to a patent attorney and see what it is like the day in the life of a patent attorney. See if that's something you're interested in. So a friend of mine who Andy Heller, I'm talking to him about this. He says, I know a patent attorney, and he gives me this guy's name, and the guy's kind enough to meet with me. The most bizarre thing happened. I'm sitting in there talking to him. He's telling me the day in the life of a patent attorney. Sounds kind of cool to me.
Yeah.
And there's a knock at the door, and in walks one of my friends from Georgia Tech. I'm like, what the heck are you doing here, Jeff? And 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 Jeff says, I'm doing what we did at Georgia Tech. We co-opted Georgia Tech. We tried things out. I'm actually getting my law degree at Georgia State University at full time, and then I work part time for Lou, who was the patent attorney, and I'm getting a chance to try it out and see if I like it, and I'm making some decent money. I'm like, and he liked it. So
Yeah.
I immediately sent my resume out to a bunch of law firms and began working as a patent agent at a local firm. And I was one of the biggest in the country called Troutman Sanders. Now it's called Troutman Pepper. Um, I finally found something I liked.
So at that point, though, you had your MBA, but you didn't have a law
I
degree
actually
yet.
didn't even have my MBA. That was the other thing I found that was cool. I could do a joint degree. I could apply a bunch of my MBA courses towards the law degree. So,
Oh,
so it actually, and I could go to school at night. I mean, it just, all these pieces started coming together. Um, but it was interesting. At the time, I'm like, I've wasted my engineering degree. Well, maybe I can use it towards patent law. I wasted my MBA degree. Who knows what but I am believing, even at a young age, find something you enjoy. I did not want to have a career for just a paycheck. I knew that for the earliest years. I had to find something that 40, 50 hours a week that I enjoyed. And and patent law was fun, and it was really cool. I didn't like developing the technology, designing it, but I loved when people showed me what the world would look like in 5 or 10 years. I like to put it in a patent application, and I loved arguing to get the inventor a patent. I love to advocate. So I found something I liked. I graduated with my JD MBA from Georgia State, become an intellectual property attorney. I'm thinking of the MBA. I'm thinking maybe I'll run the intellectual property group, or maybe I'll even run the law firm one day. I mean, I'm thinking I did like the business of the MBA, and I thought I would be at this law firm for the rest of my career. It was my law family, and just I liked all the work, and I also got exposed to more than patents as time went on. I got exposed to making money from them. Now that I was a graduate, I could actually represent clients in terms of contract negotiations. So I got to see, how to negotiate for big dollars and how to structure contracts, and that was fascinating to me. How do you make money from intellectual property? Wow, it's not just get the intellectual property, but now you can make money from it. And there was trademarks and there was litigation, and I mean the whole world of it was just fascinating to me. There was so many different ways you could take someone's idea and basically license it, sell it, and make money from it. And I thought that would be my life, just representing clients and being at my law family, Troutman Sanders. And then one day I got a call. Any questions for me at this point?
no, I want to know. I mean, I know where you ended up, but I want to know who called.
So I got a call, and it was the craziest phone call. I got a call from a recruiter, and the recruiter says, I'm calling on behalf of a Fortune 10 company. They want to start an intellectual property subsidiary, and I am told you'd be a good candidate. And I'm thinking to myself, they must have the wrong person. I'm thinking, run a subsidiary for a Fortune 10 company. I have no experience running anything. That's like impossible. And they go on to say, and this is one of the, another really important life lesson for me is giving back. And they go on to say that a woman named Sandy had recommended me. Now, Sandy was the chief intellectual property counsel for Bell South, and they were wanting to start up an intellectual property subsidiary because they were hearing how other companies were making hundreds of millions, billions of dollars off of this types of business. And she had seen me in action. And so what's interesting is when I had become a full-time intellectual property attorney, my friend Jeff again had recommended that we get involved with this organization called the Georgia Bar. Every state, when you become an attorney, you join the local bar.
Right.
And one of the things that the Georgia Bar did was have an intellectual property section, and they put on local events for the intellectual property attorneys. And see, Jeff said, "Hey, we should get involved. We should. It's a great way to meet people, network,
Sure.
learn, and give back." And so sure, so I started to get involved in projects. I started to help run events. Um, it was great. And little did I know, and this is one of those examples where when you give back, don't be surprised when you get back tenfold. And it's not always the direct connect. But because of that, Sandy Evans had seen me in action, and she had said, "Hey, Scott's a smart guy. He's a team player. He's a hard worker. Got a big heart. He's the type of person that Bell South should have potentially, running the subsidiary." The other reasons I thought I could qualify was Bell South was a telecom, and AT&T and Nortel had been telecom. So they believed the telecom background, and I had my MBA. Your MBA, you didn't have to run a business, but you've obviously been trained in running a business.
Right.
So,
You checked
so
all the boxes.
I checked all the boxes. So, I still remember coming home that night and telling my wife, Marie, what had happened. I've been called. There's no way they're going to interview me. But it was kind of nice that Sandy had recommended me. But there's no way. I mean, running a subsidiary. There's I checked the boxes barely. Um, Shortly thereafter, I get a call back from the recruiter. They want to interview me, and you know, again, I thought it was almost laughable, right? I mean, I just it's almost impossible. And I'm in my early 30s at that time, but just I've never run any business, much less run a subsidiary. So again, I tell Marie, nothing to lose. I'm gonna have some fun with this.
Right.
And I go in, and I, just tell my story, and I seem to connect with the hiring manager and some of the other people that I interviewed with. But there was no way I was going to get the offer. I mean, it was just I didn't know who all the other candidates were, but couldn't be me.
And
Um,
Scott, at this time, there was no Bell South intellectual property. It didn't exist yet. So if you were hired, you were not only going to run it, but you were going to create it. You were going to be employee number one and just and build it from scratch, correct?
that's correct. So that I mean, the whole thing was just kind of surreal, just even thinking about it. Whenever I tried to think about that, I might get this job, I'm like, I got no clue what any of this is about. I mean, I don't remember MBA school teaching me how to build a startup, and inside a big corporation. So somehow, some way, I get an offer, and who knows what all went into that decision. But the bottom line is, I get an offer, and it was an interesting decision because some people I trusted told me not to take it. They didn't think I was adequately prepared. Corporate America is a little doggy dog. They hire you, they fire you.
Right.
You got your law family, you got clients, you got people who support you and care about you, and you can be with the rest of your career. But this is another example of when I really looked deep into myself. What do I want to do with my life? What do I thoroughly enjoy? And one of the things that was going to happen with this job, by the way, is I was going to make money from intellectual property. I was going to get to sell, and I remembered that to me was very interesting. I was excited. I told you I was negotiating contracts for intellectual property contracts for people, negotiating and helping them make money. I really found that fascinating and fun. And I'll tell you, at the end of the day, I didn't know if I could do it or not do it. But just the whole opportunity to run a business, just that experience I would get, whatever happened, and knowing, and for people who work in corporations, these types of roles, they come and go, and they may not come again for decade or two. I mean, they don't. Unlike a lawyer, by the way, intellectual property lawyers. I mean, there's always 10 openings at any given time. So, I mean, I could always get a job as an intellectual property lawyer at a law firm. Maybe the Trotman would take me back, but I really did not have a whole lot of risk in terms of my career. And, but I had a potential to have gigantic upside with this corporate position. So, talk to my wife, Marie, let's do it. The funny thing about it is, if you ask my Troutman family, some of the people I worked with, what I said before I left, I said, "Do not give away my office. Um, I'm going to hand over my clients to you temporarily, but there's a very good chance I'll be back in the next 30, 60, 90 days. So just please don't mess with anything until then." Um, I just, I did not really truly believe I could be successful with this. And that's one of the things I think people should just, keep in mind. Things that you haven't done before, you may not believe that you can do them, but it's amazing if it's something that you're interested in, that you believe it meets your things that you're passionate about. It's amazing how you very well can figure it out and actually be successful with it. So I went in the direction of something I thought could be a great, match with me. Gave up something I was really enjoying, but I went for something bigger. Really, the peace, harmony, and joy. It was, calmly making a decision, like being true to myself. And it's been a miracle, ever since. I will tell you, one of the miracles was a woman named Carol Beckham, who was there when I got there. She actually should have gotten the job. She was qualified, and I'm not sure why she didn't get it. But she, after several conversations, because she was a little disappointed, I got her to join my team, and I was president, she was vice president. She knew where all the intellectual property was. She knew all the potential customers. She knew how to do all the different corporate bureaucracy. And Sandy was there to help us give the legal advice. Um, it's been a magical run, and I'll just tell you the long story short. I've been here now over 25 years. When Bell South got bought by AT&T, they let me take over for the whole AT&T. We were doing so good at Bell South, and we've made billions of dollars, almost billions of dollars of profit for the corporation. And we got one of the world's largest patent portfolios, over 10,000 patents. It's been a magical ride, and I truly believe I was living peace, harmony, and joy at a young age, and I'm just so thankful I did.
Well, that's an amazing story, and I was really hoping we can get it out of you because I don't hear you tell it often, especially all the pieces and parts. So thanks for sharing that. Like I said, it's a fantastic story. So okay, so now let's segue a little bit towards peace, harmony, and joy. Um, what was the what I'll call the genesis, but like where did the idea come from? It was before you started it. What was kind of the underpinnings of it?
Yeah, so there's really a couple of distinct parts here. Um, and I'm gonna start you off on one part. I'm gonna go to the second part. I'm gonna come back to the first part because
Okay.
it all comes together. And by the way, I'll tell you, AT&T intellectual property, Bell South and AT&T intellectual property gave me a lot of confidence. It's amazing when you run something and not only run it, but when you build it, how you believe that you can do that. And I just encourage everybody to try things. It's amazing what you'll learn. It's amazing what confidence you'll get to do the next great thing. But what happened for Peace, Harmony, and Joy? The first thing I'll tell you is I met an amazing individual called Yossi Lehrman over a decade ago, and I met Yossi at an event. It was interesting. My mom took me to the event, and I literally, he's an Orthodox rabbi, and I am Jewish, but I don't, practice much Judaism. I went to this Jewish event. I met him for all of 30 seconds. I'm Scott Frank. I'm Yossi Lehrman, and he's shaking all these people's hands. He's the kind of the master of ceremony, and I don't think he's even registered that we shook hands. It was that type of thing. I've got nothing in common with an Orthodox rabbi, and that's fine. But it was nice. I was at his event. But what Yossi did was he actually got my phone number from my mother, and he called me the following week after the event, and asked me to lunch. And it's interesting because immediately I'm like, first off, he's calling me. I'm like, why is he calling me? And like lunch, like what are we going to do at lunch? Like I'll have nothing in common with an Orthodox rabbi, and I'm certain he just wants money. And I'm thinking to myself, can I just get his address and mail him a check? But here's the thing. This gets back to peace, harmony, and joy. I've always believed there's something bigger going on. And when you trust in that, you believe things don't happen just by accident. The Bell South intellectual property to me was not an accident. All these things I've been doing for years came together. This to me, was the makings of something. I didn't know what it was, but I will tell you, and I'll just tell you to your audience, if you reach out to me, if you email me, I will respond. If you have lunch, if I'm available, I'll have lunch with you. I mean, I will connect with anybody because I don't believe anything happens by accident. So he asked me to lunch. I go to lunch with him. Um, Interestingly, it was an amazingly enjoyable lunch. Turns out, we both like baseball, big in our families. I've got my organization at AT&T. He's got his organization. He's trying to build his congregation. And so we had a lot in common, and it was a type of lunch where I was like, wow, an hour goes by, and you're like, whoa, where did the time go? At the end of the lunch, kudos to Yasi. He goes, would you mind having lunch with me next month? And I said, sure. And interestingly, he didn't ask for any money. So we have
How
lunch.
long ago what year about was this?
This was about 12 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So we had lunch, and what interesting was, and Yasi actually brought some scripture to both of these lunches, and he shared some of that. But it was just very comfortable, and we ended up having lunch every month for like 3 or 4 years. And the
Wow.
lunches went to a place which were he was helping me to grow my spirituality, and I was helping him to grow his congregation with my business skills. And and our lunches every month went to every week. And literally we would spend like 2 hours a week at his office. Like I was really helping him. I was getting into all the details and trying to really help him build up his congregation. As all that was going on, one of the things that we talked about was his congregation, the extensive anxiety a lot of people were feeling. And I think this is something that's kind of prevalent in our society right now. And you can blame it on social media, you can blame it on politics, you can blame it on a lot of things, the economy, who knows? But there was a lot of anxiety going on in his congregation, and we started talking about some things we could do to help them. And the next thing we knew, we were having these series of workshops, quarterly workshops, and it was basically just around, sitting around in a circle. People would share either an issue they had, or they would share something that they do to help themselves cope and have better lives. And it was just very informal. But the thing that was amazing about it, kind of magical, was quarter after quarter we would do these things, and we would start to have people who, like, there was a woman who hated Thanksgiving. She did not look forward to Thanksgiving. Her family just stressed her out and made her feel bad. And she was, I just remember she was getting her Thanksgiving. Oh gosh, I got, any advice? And we gave her some tips. And I'll never forget, she came back and had a good Thanksgiving. And I'll never forget, the next year she was actually looking forward to Thanksgiving. And so we were seeing people, there's all these different situations, work situations and work situations with their spouses, all these things. People were like, their lives were changing. And so Yasi and I, were leading these conversations, facilitating them, and learning about techniques. And we would talk, in between the meetings, and then we try things out. And that's where we came up with the peace, harmony, and joy concepts. And we said, hey, if we're going to help you, we'd always, all right, let's calm down, because a lot of people get emotional. Let's take some deep breaths. Let's calm down. And we would talk about ways that, if we're not in a room like this with you, like, how can you find calm in your everyday life? And we would talk about, like, why were you feeling this way? And so many people were living other people's lives. They were, living the life that their parents wanted to live, or their spouse wanted them to live, or what their friends thought was cool. And so we were just encouraging people to live their true best lives. And it was amazing how people would go and try things out that they normally wouldn't have. And they were seeming so happy. And even the joy part, we were realizing that people, they'd be doing one thing and thinking about something else, or they'd be talking to their spouse and watching the TV, and weren't being in the moment. And so we started to come upon these concepts: peace, harmony, and joy within yourself. If you feel good about yourself, you can start having it with your family and start to appreciate everybody more, and have these joyful experiences. And by the way, no need to ever fight again. Just because someone says something to you, you don't have to say something back. So we just came upon all these different concepts, and then at some point we said, we got to write a book. And one thing I didn't mention was, in the early 2000s, I wrote a couple of real estate investing books. Again, I'll bring up the name Andy Heller. I'll just say that he's my real estate investment partner, and we've been partners for over 30 years. And at some point, he said we needed to share our story. And we did. And it was at a time when real estate investing was booming, or in the early 2000s. Everybody can remember that was before the real estate bubble burst. And we had a couple bestsellers. And Yossi and I were talking, and it was really my idea. I said, we got something here we need to share with the world. I've written a couple bestsellers. I think I know how to write this book, easy to understand fashion. And so we wrote it, and we published it in November 2019. And if you remember, 2019, November was shortly before COVID. And
Right.
by the way, we published it on Amazon for $4.10. It's the cheapest you could sell a book of this size with no profit. We didn't want to make a single penny. We just wanted to share our ideas. And we didn't know if anyone would even buy it, but we just felt like we had to put it out there for the universe. And craziest thing happened. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know what all happened, but people started buying it. And some somewhat famous people got their hands on it. And it was crazy to me. We started getting contacted by people. One of the biggest was a guy named Les Brown. And so, many of the audience might recognize his name. If you don't know him, he's a motivational speaker. If you look him up on the internet, he's got millions of followers. And he invited us to speak on his podcast, Lunch with Les. And sure, we'll do it. It was interesting. During that interview, he holds up the book and he says, I've read the book three times, and it's by my nightstand, and I've got it tabbed, and I refer to it all the time. Like, huh? I'd never fathomed that would happen with anybody, any human being, much less, a person like him. And so we have this interview. It gets 40,000 views, and the book sells like gangbusters, and all these other things start to happen. And so, wow. All right, I'm gonna pause here for a moment to tell you how the Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance got formed and why it's going to be gigantically successful when I tell you about the intellectual property alliances. And so what you should know is at AT&T Intellectual Property, that's been a big success. I've shared that with you. But in the early 2000s, funny, about the time I wrote those real estate books, I was asked by my alma maters to help out with intellectual property. And I became the chair of the Georgia State University Intellectual Property Advisory Board in the early 2000s, and shortly thereafter, the Georgia Tech Intellectual Property Advisory Board. Both schools wanted to raise their intellectual property stature. They knew how important it was, and they wanted to be two of the top intellectual property universities in the country, if not the world. And over a period of 15 years, we created 50 programs. Every year we would build 3 or 4 things. We had over 50 programs over 15 years. And it outgrew the administrative staffs. They were helping us run everything. And half were for students and half were for the community. We had things like an IP job fair, charitable IP golf tournament, and things like that. But I was asked to take the 25 that were community facing, and to form a nonprofit. This is another example of Peace, Harmony, and Joy. I did not want to form a nonprofit. I fought it for like 6 months. I didn't have time to do it. I didn't know how to do it. Didn't want to do it. I liked using the administrative people. And yet it was told to me, no, you need to take these out. We don't want them anymore, even though they made some good money. But it was just overburdening. It was distracting them from their mission of educating students. And so we formed the Georgia Intellectual Property Alliance in 2018, and it was interesting. It was an interesting experience. It was a lot of work. Anyone who's ever created a nonprofit, it takes some effort. So it was a fascinating experience just creating a nonprofit. But I asked a small group of people who were helping me to form it, do we simply want to manage these 25 events? Do we want to do something special? And we looked around at other intellectual property nonprofits that represent corporations and lawyers and inventors and artists. We couldn't find any nonprofit, in much less than the state of Georgia, in the entire country, that represented the citizens, human beings. And what everybody should appreciate with intellectual property, because you may not know what it is, but I'm going to take a moment real quickly to educate you. Intellectual property is the number one reason you got the COVID vaccine as fast as you did. It's the incentive for companies to invest tons of money and time in anything you want physically in the future. The computer that you're watching this on, or the smartphone, I bet you has thousands of patents. All these ideas people have put in there. The food you eat has tons of intellectual property. Everything that you basically use in your life physically has intellectual property in it. It's fundamental to our existence. I like to say intellectual property is like oxygen. Oxygen, you don't smell it, you don't taste it, you don't think about it. But the moment you don't have it, you cease to exist. Intellectual property is the same way. If we don't have it in the future, we will cease to exist. It's so fundamental to the future of civilization, but most people don't know it. And I wanted to try to fix that. You want to say something?
Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to channel this. So we got a couple things going on, but you created the Georgia Intellectual Property Alliance out of these schools and with this thought process that you wanted something sort of for the people from that perspective. So you've got almost parallel efforts going on, it sounds like, between peace, harmony, and joy and the thought process there and the intellectual property organization. Is that
Exactly.
kind of where you're going with that?
That's where I'm going with it. And if it wasn't for these intellectual property alliances, the Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance wouldn't exist. The book was great, and I maybe would have written another book. But these intellectual property alliances. So in Georgia, we set out to be the intellectual property state. We know we want to be the state that basically gets everything it needs as fast as possible. We want to everything physically we want Georgia to be the go-to state. One of the first things that happened is we got the state of Georgia on our board, and our governor proclaimed October Intellectual Property Month in Georgia. And that was like, wow. I mean, our leadership of the state got it, and it really helped move things forward. We did a whole bunch of other things, raised a bunch of money, and actually we got a bunch of venture capitalists and entrepreneurs, smart people, didn't know much about intellectual property, got them to get educated, got them to work together. Like magical things started happening. Other states started finding out about it. And before we knew it, other states like Illinois and Kentucky and Ohio and Texas, California, there's about 20 states now that have intellectual property licenses that copy Georgia. And guess what? We gave all of our ideas away for free because we just wanted to help people. We want Georgia to be the best, but we were helping everybody. But here's what
Right.
happened. It was like the Wild Wild West all over the country. It was very unstructured. And so Georgia in 2020, 2 years after forming the Georgia IP Alliance, forms the US IP Alliance as the umbrella organization to have some structure because we want to make sure that these things are run right all over the country. And we go around the country, kind of like we did in Georgia. We got the state of Georgia, we got Georgia Tech, Georgia Bio, Georgia Chamber, we got all these the state IPA ecosystem constituents on our board. We go around the nation. And I was shocked when the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office joined my board, and the U.S. Copyright Office, and AIPLA and IPO, all these national IP organizations joined my board or became partners with me because they also understood the value. All these people were IP professionals, but they're also human beings, and they wanted to make sure that the United States had what it needed intellectual property wise going forward. So the magic continues to happen. And one of the things that I learned with all these national organizations, they have all these great programs and events. They have a hard time driving things local. They loved my state IPAs. And by the way, if you're a citizen and you have an idea, it's really complicated to navigate the national IP landscape. We made it easier. So we create this amazing network, and we're all these magical things are happening. And then all of a sudden, something even more magical happened. The World Intellectual Property Organization, created by the United Nations, based in Geneva, Switzerland, contacts me. And they find out what we're doing, and they say, could you do this for the world? I'm like, what? And so I get together a small group of people, and I'm like, don't know. And by the way, this is like Bell South all over again.
Yeah,
But it sounds
absolutely.
exciting. You never know if you don't try. It's too important. So we go off to do it. A senior official from WIPO joins the board of the US IPA in 2021 with one express purpose to launch the Global IP Alliance in 2022. And in 2022, WIPO sent a bunch of senior officials from Geneva, Switzerland to Atlanta, Georgia. We launched the Global IP Alliance and signed an MOU on day one. And within a year, we're in over 50 countries and hundreds of people working on this. And it's changing people's lives in ways that we never imagined. That gave me the confidence to do something even bigger and better, which is the Peace, Harmony, Joy Alliance.
So okay, so let's change gears to Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance. So I've got this vision of what you created in the intellectual property world. So I'm putting words in your mouth, but my speculation is that you saw this path that was blazed in the intellectual property side, and you saw, hey, we can do the same thing with the concepts that we started out, Yossi and you, with people sitting around a table solving problems just for individuals. Is that the concept?
That's basically it. And so I started talking to people like, we want to have the next vaccine for the next pandemic. That's pretty important. So, what we're doing globally with IP, I'm proud of that, and we want to continue to build that out. And it's amazing what we created in less than 5 years. But it's funny the conversations I had with people. I mean, and it really, I wanted to help people individually, but the bigger thing was peace on earth. You just look at all the different issues going on our planet and all the dissension, and social media stirs things up, and there's politics, and there's wars, and there's all this stuff going on, and people were like, you know, the IP alliances are for everything we need physically, but peace, harmony, and joy is for everything we need spiritually. And it's just as important, if not more important. And so it got me thinking, I don't know if the way, it's what they say the definition of insanity is try to keep doing the same thing over and over again. If we're gonna count on countries to do peace treaties and have peace on earth, is that ever going to happen? If you're looking for religious organizations to do it or corporations, it just, it's so important to the future of our planet to have true peace. And by the way, I'd like to have peace, harmony, and joy on earth. And so the more and more I talk to people and thought about it, I'm like, you know, again, I believe something bigger is going on. Why did I get the Bell South AT&T intellectual property experience? That gave me the confidence to learn how to build things. Why did I get the Intellectual Property Alliance opportunity experience? That gave me the opportunity to build nonprofits, build a global organization for everything we need physically. Like I could do almost the exact same thing for spiritually, and just maybe have a significant impact on peace on earth. And by the way, again, the book says peace with others, peace in your community starts with peace within. So we've got to teach people the peace, harmony, joy principles, have people feeling good about themselves so they can impact people close to them, and ultimately band together with like-minded organizations and transform the world like we're doing with intellectual property.
All right, Scott, I'm gonna let you take a breath for a second. That is a lot for us to digest. So let's change gears again, and let's back up to you personally. So peace, harmony, and joy. How do you implement that on say a daily basis? Like how does that impact your life today?
It has a big role. And one of the things that I talk to people about is how you start your day. And I will just share that I'm a big believer in rituals, especially in how you start your day. I think many, if not most people, start their day with they get out of bed, take a shower, get some breakfast, go to work, that type of thing. They might read the newspaper, but there's not a whole lot of preparation I think most people put into their day. For those who know me, those who have lived with me, I it used to be an hour. Now it's more like 2 hours. I carve out a bunch of time at the beginning of the day to prepare myself for it. And it starts off with preparing myself mentally. And I will tell you, I do some peace, harmony, and joy exercises to create a calm and really to get my mind and my body, in a harmonic space and just, to kind of start to feel the joy. And I've got a series of things that I go through the same things every day to kind of get my mind to think about things just it's more of a general approach. I do a little bit of meditation, but I really try to start my day in a good way. That way, I then do some things that are prepare me for what I'm going to experience that day. I think a lot of people, they show up at the office and like, what am I going to do that day? But I will tell you, all my meetings, I'm preparing for them before I leave my house. I've got notes and everything ready, and what do I want to achieve, and what do I want to experience? How do I want people to experience me? And so there's a whole lot of preparation I put into every day early at the beginning of the day, and I think that is probably one of the biggest things that I do so that I can have peace, harmony, and joy on a daily basis.
So my next question, and I think you probably already answered it for me, but is how do you help other people or teach other people to implement peace, harmony, joy in their lives? But I think the answer is, or at least a key part of the answer is preparation, is kind of emulating what you do.
I think that's right. I will also say at the same time, not everybody is interested in peace, harmony, and joy, right? Not everybody wants to be like me. I think a lot of people think their lives are fine and they don't need help and all that type of thing. And so, there are a lot of people that have asked me how I do this, and I'm always happy to help and share. But I'll tell you that the thing that's even more interesting to me is the way we can impact others without them even knowing it. And so, and then we talk about that in the book some is I try to truly um, have an impact on people so that they have a peaceful, harmonious, joyful experience when they're around me. Doesn't always work, and I'm not perfect at it, but there's so many people that have made comments to me that they don't even know what peace, harmony, and joy is, but they'll say like, "That was really fun," and that was like, it's really I really enjoyed working with you. Um, and one of the stories I like to share is with my wife. I had 4 kids, and when they were young, I'd come home from work every day, long day at work. My wife, long day with 4 kids, and how was your day? Fine. How was your day? Fine. I mean, it was, we probably went a little bit more details, but it was a pretty short conversation. Kids are upstairs. Please give them a bath. Please put them to bed. But it was just, that type of thing. And over a decade ago, I learned some concepts from a couple of amazing people, called Diane and Alan Collins, and they've come up with this, book. Diane wrote the book "Do You Quantum Think," and Alan's as a quantum think coach. And there's a lot of principles in there that allow you that teach you how to quantum think your life. And I think a lot of what I just shared with you, how my life has gone, is they've helped me to make my life 10 times, 100 times better, because there's a lot of principles that they have taught me how to really transform my thinking and transform my life. And they've also taught me how to transform my relationships. And it's interesting. There's some principles that they have, and my one of the examples was with my wife was, um, I learned about this thing called listening from not knowing, and we all have people in our lives that we just talk to, especially family. We've known our whole life. We know what they're going to say before they say it.
Yeah.
It's just all habit, and we're so busy, and we have. We call least action pathways, and we just quickly jump to conclusions. But if you can take the time to treat every conversation you have with a person like you've never talked to them before, and truly like they're like just a new person in your life, you'll be amazed about the deep conversations and the experience that that person will have, and actually that you will have, the joyful experience. And I started doing that with my wife over a decade ago. And I wasn't calling it peace, harmony, and joy at that time, but I was trying to listen from not knowing, and it was truly a peaceful, harmonious, a joyful experience because I did it. And after like a week or two, she said something is different here. And what was interesting was not just me treating her like I'd never met her before, and like she, how was your day? Oh, I worked out. Well, what equipment did you use? Did you meet anybody there? And she would go into these things, and did you go out for lunch afterwards? I mean, it's just all these different things that she would go into that were actually interesting. And by the way, she started asking me questions, and it just, our whole relationship, went to a whole nother level. And so there's so many ways to experience people, and to have an impact on people's experiences of you. And so there are people that want to learn peace, harmony, and joy from me. Happy to teach it. There's lots of people who don't think they need it. You can still have an amazing impact on them too.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be trying that with my wife. I think she'd think I did something wrong and trying to proactively make up for it. But so Scott, I missed asking a question before, which I should have asked. So I'm going to change gears back to the larger organization real quick. So you talked about the goals for peace, harmony, and joy. Obviously, huge goals, world peace, incredible concepts. Um, Along the way, when you're trying to accomplish something big, you cut off little pieces that you're trying to do, different initiatives. Are there some initiatives that you can share with us that we're making progress on that are going to help us get to this overall goal?
We got a whole bunch of things going on, including these podcasts. Um, I want to keep it simple. There's 3 words I will put out there. We're trying to teach people, we're trying to connect people, and we're trying to facilitate people. Um, the teaching, to me, the simple thing I'll just put out there: you can read a book, but you're probably going to forget about a lot of what you read 6 months later. We've got some training sessions. Training is great, but again, if you don't have it consistently for long periods, it's, a few training sessions isn't going to get you there. The workshops that Yasi and I built this on, to me, is the game changer. I'll compare it to Alcoholics Anonymous. They heck, it's all based on a book, by the way. The big book is people like to refer to it, and if you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to read it because it's not just for alcoholics. There's lots of great life lessons in there. Um, but they have the support group, and they work on their, if you're an alcoholic, they work on your muscles to make sure that you know how to deal with your alcoholism. We want to build similar support groups for peace, harmony, and joy, so you can work your peace, harmony, and joy muscle consistently and for long periods of time. Alcoholics Anonymous, people go there, for years and decades, and their lives get transformed. And so we want to have our workshops in very similar ways all over the country, all over the world. And we wanted small groups, communities, to get together. We want people to have, in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's, you have a sponsor and a sponsee. I think we're going to call them PHJA partners, but people can help you, not only hold you accountable, but they can help you when you're in situations, because you're bound to have some anxiety or some situation that, like, what do I do? Who can I turn to? But I think that's going to be the real game changer. And that's in 2024 is one of our top priorities, to start building these things out. So if you can teach people how to do it themselves, but if they're doing it with themselves, they're going to start doing it with people around them. You're going to see that whole ripple effect. So that's the teach. The connect is connecting like-minded organizations. There are so many organizations on this planet that are doing parts of peace, harmony, and joy. There's lots that are helping people feel better about themselves and how to deal with anxiety and things like that, and even be there, to discover their destiny and things like that. There's lots of organizations doing those pieces. There's lots of organizations also that are trying to be peace mediators or trying to get people to understand each other better. I mean, there's lots of them working on the peace, harmony, and joy with others that are close to them or in their community. But there's nobody that we have found that's doing all of it. And because no one's doing all of it, they're not together working as a unit, unified to transform the planet and have peace on earth. And so as we're teaching people and having this ripple effect, we also are kind of top down trying to knit this quilt of organizations like we've done with the Global IP Alliance, and try to bring all like-minded peace, harmony, and joy organizations together around the planet. And I truly believe that not if, but when we do it, you're going to see a transformation, because they're all over the world. Every country just about has them. And you're going to see the people decide how this world is going to live in peace. And it's because these organizations, the people in them, are going to band together. And by the way, the facilitator is about us smart people figuring out how to make it all work and how to truly transform the world.
Okay, so for the people listening to us now and the ones that this resonates with, they want to learn more. Where do they do? How do they find out more?
Yeah, so you can find us, first off, we have a website, peaceharmonyjoy.org, and you can sign up to be a member. There's no cost, and you can get our emails, and you can find out the different events, and just join up with us. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and we're all over the place. We have inspirational messages we send out regularly, and all the different things we're doing. And I will just say this: if you want to get involved, if you want to make an impact, if you want to help change the world, make the world a better place, we'd love to have you join our joyful journey.
Well, let's end on that, Scott. So for the Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance, please follow us, like us, give us a review, and most importantly, like Scott just said, join us on our joyful journey to bring peace, harmony, and joy to the world.